Hey, this is Pete. Thanks for checking out my channel and this blues guitar tutorial. So this time around I'm going to talk about something a little different. It's a list of 10 really influential electric blues albums from the 1950s and 60s. These are CDs or vinyl that I picked up when I was just starting out playing blues guitar. So to this day I still listen to these albums and they're really influential to me, and I'm sure a lot of others out there as well. So we'll get right in on the list, and they're in no specific order. They're all quite different in styles, but I'm going to start off with number 1, a really great album by T-Bone Walker. This album's called T-Bone Blues, and it was released in the late 1950s. He's got a great band with him and really playing a lot of jump blues, and there's some real feel-based slow blues as well. He's got this great sense of swing. He's playing double-timed slow blues with a swing feel. I mean, how great is that? Barney Kessel as well is on this album. You can hear him playing his jazzy blues lines as well. Fantastic band, in case I haven't mentioned that already. The piano and drums and upright bass, and of course the horns. Alright, so T-Bone Walker, check this album out if you haven't already heard it. Highly recommend it. Alright, so this next one is by Jimmy Reed. It's at Carnegie Hall. Actually, it wasn't at Carnegie Hall, but it's a studio album and it's got some of his greatest hits on this. I picked this up as a double album. I remember literally wearing the grooves out on this one. Eddie Taylor and Jimmy Reed together and that great band, just playing how they felt it. Chicago blues at its best. That rhythm and the shuffle that Jimmy Reed and Eddie Taylor had going together, that still works for me today. I just love Jimmy Reed. And there's so many great hits on this album, so you can't go wrong checking out At Carnegie Hall. Many years ago I discovered Freddie King. I was listening to a blues radio hour and they played one of his instrumentals. Probably Hideaway, could have been another one. But the next day I went to the CD store and I picked out this album, Heads Up, which is a compilation of his early instrumentals. Really great, from the early 1960s. Probably he was playing his Les Paul with P90s at that time. I loved his guitar tone and well, just those catchy instrumentals, quite short, but he had a head or a melodic introduction and outro, and then he'd play a great solo inside the structure of the instrumental itself. So this one was really influential to me, and this was before I even heard him sing. When I heard him sing, well then that was another world of Freddie King that was to be checked out. So check out some of his early instrumentals, you won't be disappointed. There's some real classics on that, and he covers a lot of different rhythmic grooves as well. So this fourth one is by the Butterfield Blues Band. Really a great band with Paul Butterfield on harmonica and vocals, Mike Bloomfield guitar, Elvin Bishop guitar, Jerome Arnold, and Sam Lay on drums. So this one is East West, and I think it's their second album. Their first album as well, Paul Butterfield Blues Band. Another great album. I discovered both of these actually just in the record store, and I saw these vinyl albums, the Blues Vinyl Album Rack. I saw the cover and I thought, hey, this looks great. And I recognized some of the songs as well. They did a lot of covers on this. So East West though is a little different because they started experimenting on their second album, and it literally is East West. There's some Middle Eastern themes on this improvisation. It's some great guitar and harmonica. So the whole album is fantastic, and the rhythm section is just classic Chicago blues. You can't go wrong with either of the two, Paul Butterfield Blues Band or East West. So this next one is a real classic of Chicago blues from the Chess era, Jimmie Rodgers' Chicago Bound. So many great musicians on this, Muddy Waters, Little Walter, Big Walter Horton, and the great Otis Spann as well. Jimmie Rodgers is singing great. He's also playing his guitar in his sparse ensemble manner. So it's not like a Guitar Hero type album, but just shows how important it is to play in the pocket and play together as a band member in an ensemble format, instead of just playing on his own and kind of leading the band with guitar histrionics. Anyway, definitely recommended. So many classic songs on this one as well. Chicago Bound by Jimmie Rodgers. Number 6 is by the great B.B. King. So many albums and so many classic songs that he recorded throughout his career, from the 1950s until, well, relatively recently. So this one that I picked up, I found it in a used record bin. And I just loved the photos so much. Of course, I knew B.B. King. I knew of the Live at the Regal and whatnot. I was listening to him already. But I found this compilation called Great Moments with B.B. King. And why I really love this, I was so shocked at the great live recordings that are on this. His reverb-drenched guitar, I mean, it's just, the tone alone is incredible. There's a lot of feel and there's a lot of intensity. So B.B. King was great for that. Of course, his vocal, fantastic, and the classic songs. Later on in the album, it starts off with a lot of live tracks, and then there's some really interesting studio tracks as well. They might have been outtakes or whatnot, but they're interesting, and it's definitely from his 1960s period. So there's so many classic recordings by B.B. King, but definitely check out this Great Moments with B.B. King. One of my favorite Chicago blues guitar players from the 1960s is Magic Sam. Himself, along with Otis Rush and Buddy Guy, had a sort of trio of classic Chicago blues guitarists in that period. I'm sure they did a lot of head cutting contests or whatnot as well. But this Magic Sam album is a live album, so it's a little bit rough sounding and crude sounding, but his playing is incredible. Shaky Jake is on this as well, playing some harmonica, and his band is on fire. There's some improvisation, you can hear them just having a good time, and it sounds like a small club. I think it's at Silvio's in Chicago, live in Chicago. So it's from the mid 60s, mid to late 60s actually. And there's some classic songs. He's doing a lot of covers, but his singing's fantastic, and so much feel on his guitar. I really spent a lot of time with this album, and to this day I still listen to it, and I really get a charge out of listening to Magic Sam and this album, Magic Touch. So this next album by Fleetwood Mac, it's actually their debut album. I discovered this by accident. Of course, I had heard of Fleetwood Mac in their pop and rock days in the 1970s and 80s. They were big stars, of course. But I discovered this album and it had a trash can on the front. I turned it around back and I noticed that there was blues songs on it. So I picked it up and I was really blown away. I couldn't believe that, number one, that they were a blues band, and then Peter Green is singing and his guitar playing. So much feel, and that great tone of his out-of-phase Les Paul. His ability to channel B.B. King but still do it in his own way. The rhythm section was Mick Fleetwood and John McVie, and of course there was Jeremy Spencer, who was playing Elmore James style slide guitar as well. It's still a great album. I listen to it all the time and it always gives me a charge. Check that out, the debut album by Fleetwood Mac. The three kings are so important to the history of blues guitar. There's Baby, of course, that I talked about, and Freddie. And then there's Albert King. So I discovered this album in the used record store as well, and I really liked the cover. I'd heard of Albert King, of course, Born Under a Bad Sign, and whatever else I'd heard, on my radio show, Blues Radio Hour. But this album was just fantastic. When I found this, I could just understand why he's one of the three kings. Fantastic singing, and just his ability to bend strings and phrase blues guitar in such a great natural way. It's real precise playing as well. That amazing ability to bend strings was a huge influence on Stevie Ray Vaughan, as we all know. So the big blues of Albert King, check that out, his early recordings, studio recordings from this great blues artist. Alright, to round out my list of influential guitar albums that I discovered when I was just starting to play blues guitar, I have to include one of the greatest blues vocalists of all time, and that's Bobby Blue Bland. He had many different periods throughout his career of different styles of music and whatnot, but the early Duke recordings, there's a few editions of this, like compilation albums. There's a lot of straight-ahead blues with a bit of a Texas feel as well. So the guitar players on these early recordings were Clarence Holloman and Wayne Bennett. Both of them are fantastic players. Hollow body players that were definitely influenced by T-Bone Walker. So there's that sense of feel and that kind of Texas guitar sound. Real in-the-pocket players playing in the ensemble format. great rhythm playing and just killer guitar solos. So definitely check out some of the Duke recordings of Bobby Blue Land. Thanks for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. 10 influential electric blues guitar albums from the 50s and 60s. These are albums that I discovered when I was just starting to play blues. And to this day, I'm still listening to them. I always hear something different that I haven't heard before. So it's a bit of a learning experience, and of course they energize me listening to such classic blues. If you haven't found some of these or haven't heard of some of these, check them out on Spotify and probably on YouTube. As well, online you can probably still find the CDs and vinyl as well. And I encourage you to source them out. Alright, so I'm going to return next week with a blues guitar tutorial, and remember that you can subscribe to my channel for regular blues guitar lessons. We'll see you again soon.